You're good. Hello, Vapor Central. Welcome back to the Karma Cup Speaker Series. I had the pleasure of meeting our next speaker just about 5 minutes ago and kind of getting into his origin story and kind of what he does now and how he supports the cannabis industry and the cannabis community is really interesting. So up next we have Scott Wilkins. His expertise is actually in insurance. So Scott, you have the stage.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you. And this is on. Yes, thank you. And so I'd like to thank everybody here for coming out, as well as everybody watching as well. It's been an amazing event. My name is Scott Wilkins, and I work with a company called LMG Insurance, and we have been insuring cannabis growers for, about 10 years, since 2008. We attended the first trade show, which was called Treating Yourself, here in Toronto, and I was actually sitting in Vapor Lounge 8 years ago right there with Remo and Matt Murnau, and Matt Murnau showed us a rig that had dabs for the very first time. What's that crystal nail? I can remember this place great. So I'm glad to be back. But one of the things that I wanted to sort of touch on is the event organizers. Thanks for having me, and Sarah's done a great job at getting everything all together, as well as organizing the speakers here. So I've worked with them for 3 years, but this is my first time actually coming out to attend the event, and I'm really happy I took the effort to come out. I had a gas yesterday. We're going to head down and watch the judging later, and it's going to be amazing. So I'd like to thank everybody there and get into my talk now, I guess, at that point. I guess cannabis and insurance, it's one of those things where it's always been a question mark. Even when you're legal, you're afraid to bring it up because you're dealing with banks and academics who have that stigma that we all know so well. So what happened with me is my background, a bit of my background is I have ADD, harsh, and it's given me this incredible analytical skill. So I'm a high-risk insurance agent, meaning hard-to-place risks were my specialties. And about 9 years ago, I had a guy approach me who had a lease that coma that this helped. So it's a little crack. We stick our foot in and we pry the shit out of the door. And I wrote my first policy. And that was, something that was impressive. Then we came out to the 2008 show here. And then we went back to BC and started to write insurance policies. And we ended up with quite a few. And like I mentioned earlier, we're dealing with over 1,000 policies now. The ACMPR, which is like the old MMAR, is still moving forward. But what happened is I wanted to sort of brief a bit about the regulatory as well, meaning when I got involved in this to help out these guys, there was no commercial production. There was nothing. There was just this rumor about ACMPR that might be coming. So we started the program and started rolling it along. And then, of course, they announced the ACMPR and that they were going to shut down the MMAR program. And we all know what happened there is the Allard case came up. And I was actually quite fortunate to be asked to participate. And I was one of the expert witnesses in the Allard case. And I was a rebuttal to Shane Holmquist and the RCMP, and also forget the Surrey Fire Chief's name. But they didn't have much evidence, and I was the only guy at the time. I had over 300 insurance policies. We had no claims on these things. I had all this amazing academic data that nobody could see. John Conroy and Kirk Tusaw approached me, and next thing you know, I participated in the Allard trial, and I had a great time. It was great. We won. And but during that process, they invented the ACMPR, which is the last regulatory framework that we're dealing with at this moment, which is, okay, we'll reinvent the home growers and we'll let them do it under the Part 2 of the ACMPR. So basically, we're back to where we were before the program ended, with two programs running parallel, and we're about to retail. So there's a lot of challenges going on in that space when it comes to trying to develop a business plan. The regulatory change, it keeps on happening and happening. So you're pushing around one direction, and then all of a sudden everything changes on you, and you have to sort of focus on something else. So I want to look at my notes here real quick. So with the MMPR, they were trying to get rid of the home growers and the designated growers. But prior to that, when there was no such thing as the commercial, we would insure homeowners, people who are renting outbuildings on people's properties, basically any type of scenario where people could set up a legal MMAR license, whether it's on commercial property, residential property, we were able to supply a solution. The pricing was a little tough, but not unaffordable. And as we move on, the pricing has come down, the coverages have come up, and we're sitting on the cusp of the economy of scale, is what I call it, meaning we have all this policy, all this premium, amazing loss ratios, where we're going to say soon, we're going to approach some special insurers and say, we want these rates, this is the business we can give you. And hopefully somebody, a mainstream company, not the guys that I've been having to deal with, Lloyd's and non-mainstream companies for this. I'd like to see a mainstream person jump up and take this on with respect to the economy of scales and all that. But we're not there yet. We're almost there, which means the pricing will come down to what normal insurance should cost, maybe with a cannabis endorsement or something like that. Excuse me, instead of the way we do it now. But we do it now because people do it in their homes. They owe money on their homes. One of the problems with the Health Canada program initially is they gave you all the information how to set up. You set up, and then you call your insurance agent, and then you get canceled, or you don't tell your insurance company, and that's the situation where it doesn't bode well for anybody who's doing cannabis, because they think you're hiding. But what you're really doing is just trying to do what you need to do for your medicine, but not get in trouble because of the stigma and the insurance. You don't understand. But now there are people out there. I'm not the only guy doing this as well. There's insurance people that are doing it all over, but I think I'm the best. I'll add that. I also am an expert on the other side of the fence, the LPs, meaning during the process when the MMPR came through, 2 of my MMPR growers successfully transferred into that group of the first LPs that were approved. And so as a result, I had to learn quickly how to set up the insurance policies for them with respect to commercial risks and the ability to sell product to many people, where now you're into product liability and a whole bunch of other things as well. So in that regard, we ended up going forward with the 2 LPs that we had, and at present I work with about 9 of them, and about 30 of them that are about to pop, sort of thing. Lots and lots of stuff going on in that area, and that also brings us more to this sort of demographic, which is the micro LP licenses that everybody's talking about, we're waiting to hear about. And I'm working with the Craft Cannabis Association of British Columbia because that's where I'm from, but we're trying to get more information on this so we can start to get some of the amazing skill. Like everybody who is at this show that Sarah puts on every year, they need to be involved in the production of cannabis. There's so much skill and ability, and at present there's no regulatory framework that allows them to participate into the future. So it would be a shame if we lost all that good labor and skill and all that. So hopefully the micro LP, when it does come out, will allow a lot of smaller businesses to start up and allow some of the people who have been in this business for many, many years, whether it's gray or whatever, to participate, which is what we like. From a market perspective, I don't think we've reached the end. Nobody really knows how much cannabis is going to be sold, but I honestly think we're nowhere near the production ability that we're supposed to have. So when the retail does come, what we see in 5 years from now is going to be totally different than what's happening now. And I'm working with the LPs who are stocking and selling hundreds of thousands of grams right now to all the government stores. And there's 2 sort of landscapes with this. There's a private store that some provinces and some areas are going to allow, and they're going to be able to buy product from the LPs and all that. They're going to have some insurance and that. But when you deal with the government stores, and I've already dealt with them, they have very specific requirements. If I'm an LP and I want to sell to the LCBO, I need $25 million worth of liability insurance first, right? There's been some cases, we've got class action stuff, where it's been very expensive. So the LCBO, being a person that touches it and resells it, they will vicariously be involved in those lawsuits. So they say, no, pump the liability up and we're going to be okay. So that's expensive. The other thing is the excise tax, meaning the way tobacco, alcohol, and now cannabis is sold to, yeah, sin tax. It has a built-in tax that is totally different than a sales tax, and that gets charged on a POS system, meaning it's part of the product cost. So as a result of that, when you are doing that as an LP, you require to have a bond, an excise tax bond put in place for the tax portion. I'll give you an example. I've had a request for a bond for $3 million, which isn't a big deal. That's the dollar a gram. That would cover $3 million worth of $1 a grams. And the same thing, I've had one for $25 million as well. And a bond gets put up in place and stays there because the insurance company won't pay tax. Meaning, if you lose your truck of cannabis, tobacco, or alcohol, it's the same thing. The insurance company pays for the portion that's not taxed, and then you need to go to your bond and collect the portion that is taxed, so you have full indemnity. So that's another way they're doing it. But the cost of a bond for $25 million is not cheap. But it's always coming down with respect to the volume that's coming and whatnot. So it's happening in that regard, and it's been happening for months now. We've been working on this stuff. So they're trying to get ready, and most of them are going to be there. Most of them are going to be there on October 17th. So what we're left with is a program here in Canada that will allow Canadians to grow plants at home, 4 plants if you're non-medical. Everybody says what's going to happen to medical, but I see the statistics of the ACMPR. There's 2,000 to 3,000 people signing up a month to grow their own medicine. So I don't see, plus the MMAR, plus the ones that have already signed, there's probably 35,000 or 40,000 Canadians right now growing their own cannabis at home for medical purposes. And with this talk about people saying what's going to happen to medical after recreation, let's get rid of it. And, if you want to try it, you can just go down to the store and buy a gram and try it. Well, that's a big reverse. I don't think that they're going to do that. They might try to do it, but any Canadian that requires more than 4 plants for medical purposes, I think it's been established over and over and over again in court. So it'd be hard for people to change the home growing portion of this. Now, the plant counts and that sort of stuff might be altered, but as far as the ability to grow more than 4 under medical, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And that's been my business plan. I'm strictly looking at the medical. The recreational came along on this side, and just by association, I'm busy there. But my business plan hasn't changed. I'm counting on them not changing the the ACMPR, or getting rid of the fact that you can grow your own medicine. But we are just a lawsuit away from everything, I believe. They've tried many times to do things. As a matter of fact, I always found it quite interesting that the architecture of these programs are built on lawsuits. Meaning, I put it out like this, and then this lawsuit makes it do that, and so you're ended up with more or less a bastardized version of a regulation that has been pushed, right? So you don't end up with an absolute perfect one, but that is what is good about Canada, meaning if they try to do that again in the future, I'm fairly certain there's enough resources around in the cannabis community to probably take them to task like they did with Allard. But we'll see. We don't know. So both the programs are up and running now, medical and also the recreational stuff. And we're also dealing with many, many, many ancillary businesses as well, meaning you go to a trade show now, and I mean, everybody's got branding, everybody's supporting the growers with it's a massive economic push, and it's a great opportunity in the sense for anybody who has certain businesses and technology that they could just tweak over and now access the cannabis producers markets as well, and specialize in that. It's for business people, it's an economic boom. And the smart ones and the people who jump on the bandwagons and do the right thing are going to be the captains of our industry as we move forward. But I'm here for insurance, so I just did need to talk a bit about some of the policy details. Insurance is one dry notch above accounting. I hope I haven't offended any accountants, but one of the things about it is it's boring, but I like to try to make it a little exciting. But I'm insuring cannabis, so I think it is. But the way an insurance policy works in general is it's an all-risk policy subject to policy exclusions, meaning everything's covered except what they exclude, and they'll exclude common sense things like intentional acts, normal things. There's not very many exclusions. So if I drop a plate of hot enchiladas on my $3,000 collected rug, as long as there's not an enchilada dropping exclusion, I'm covered. So it's a pretty broad setup in that regard, and the policies are also a contractual agreement subject to meeting the conditions for the payout, which if any of my clients don't have a problem in their insurance policy and they have a claim, that means we push hard for payment right away because the policy is correct. Often the delay in the insurance adjusting process is because there's confusion on how the policy was written. The wordings may not have applied. The adjusters are always trying to figure out a way to save the insurance company money. I'm involved with all my claims. I don't let any of that go on. I know the wording's as good as the underwriters and the adjusters, and so as a result, we don't have many denied claims in that regard. But this class of business doesn't have a lot of claims either. We in the insurance industry, we measure profitability with what we call a loss ratio. And a loss ratio means if I'm running 100% loss ratio, every dollar I've taken in, I've put out in a claim. So that sucks. You don't want to have to run a loss ratio at 100% because you got to start pumping rates up right away. So on average, homeowners insurance, like very profitable stuff for insurance companies, cookie cutter car, they're running an acceptable loss ratio is up to 30% in most cases. And then they work to try to get it down. And cannabis, I have 10 years of data. I have recorded all my claims. 6% loss ratio. I'll say it again, 6% loss, better than any class of business we have. Two reasons for that. The way we select our risks, we don't select bad ones, meaning if you don't have the electrical done correctly, we stop. I know electricians in your area that are green friendly. If you want, they'll come and look. They'll bring you back up to speed. Then you and I can continue, right? We try not to write bad risk. So we are also bringing some of the people up in that way. But it's just something that, we needed to sort of approach and make sure we do it right. So we're talking about the policy details, the all risk and all that. But if you're a commercial setup where you're running a commercial business, you don't need the homeowner style coverages. You're more of a commercial exposure. And as it sits, we also insure dispensaries, and we have about 36 of them insured across Canada, and they're illegal. And people wonder, how do we do it? And we do it because I got the underwriters to agree that we're not in illegal activity, let alone they have huge exclusions for illegal activity anyways. What we're after is this guy who wants to run a business, who has a license or applied for a license through Vancouver or whatever. He shows that he's got a lease and there's a requirement for insurance. And I convinced the underwriters that we're insuring a slip and trip. We're insuring his POS system. We're insuring liability for people walking in and out of the store. It's not about insuring the cannabis or any illegal activity, let alone the medical process to become a member and all that. So I insured my first dispensary about 4.5 years ago on that basis, and then of course we've gone from there. Then we got into vapor lounges, and I don't know how it works out here in Toronto, but I work with a few in British Columbia, and I'm working with the underwriters in London, and they're like, well, how do you deal with over-serving, intoxication? And I'm like, well, you don't really get intoxicated, and I'm sending them all these links on, you just sleep on the couch, you don't have to worry about anything, and it's not really like alcohol. And through the process, I educated him to the point where what he cared about was what happens if a big guy fell on a lady that was small, and then there's a liability issue, right? So in the end, we were able to insure our very first vapor lounge, and one of the requirements was a sign-in process and a sign-out process, and so I advanced that to anybody who wanted to open one of these and allowing them to get insured. So we were able to do that, and we insure a lot of those businesses as well. But it's not. We're not insuring the illegal activity. There is nothing to insure if there is illegal activity, but it's not a risk from an insurance point of view, and I'm able to communicate that to the underwriter. So it's been working out for me. Um, when we get into more of the commercial end of coverages, um, a micro LP is going to have the same exposures as an LP, meaning product liability. If you're selling something to people, you're going to be taken to task if you fuck and you sell bad product, and it's the same whether you're a micro LP or not. And some of the coverages and stuff that we've been able to establish for what I'm calling craft. Biological asset coverage. Well, what's that? Biological assets, growing plants. You want to make sure that that's your bread and butter. And if you had an issue and you lost your crop, that you're able to somehow regain financial indemnity from it. Now, a lot of the times, I put this coverage on a crop because it's a contractual requirement, meaning somebody's putting money in, somebody's doing something, and they say, we'll do it, but you need to buy this insurance, you need to buy that insurance to protect my investment and the money that I'm lending you for your business. So biological assets, if you're worried about it, we can insure it, but most of the time it becomes, you can manage that with risk management. Like most people, you don't leave your grow room that much. You have safety switches. There's many redundant things you can do before you buy biological asset coverage. And that's one of the things that I explore with the clients as well from an exposure point of view, like where do you need to buy insurance and where do you need to self-insure and how will it affect your premium? So things that are hard to recover from financially, we use a risk matrix to sort of point them out so that people understand. And anything that's hard to recover from financially, we just throw it into insurance. It's not anything else. It's just a cost of doing business. Everything else I risk manage and will cover myself, right? And then we move on from there. So if you need product coverage for your product, used to be in a vault or wherever you store it, we can cover dried bud, drying bud, growing plants, and now oils as well too. So obviously for only the LPs, but instantly when the micro LPs come out as well. Labs, people who are doing lab work and whatnot, they have a huge exposure in errors and emissions, but labs have always been the same. It's just now that they're looking more onto the cannabis end of things. So I've been fortunate enough to work with a few of the well-known labs that work with the LPs and put together their policies. And we're looking at the biggest thing with them is an errors and emissions policy, meaning if they make an error and emission in one of their tests and then you go ahead and do something and it causes you financial destruction because they were wrong, they can get the coverage. And errors and emissions isn't covered liability, product liability. It's a standalone coverage that you need if you're that type of a risk. You wouldn't need errors and emissions if you were a vapor lounge, that type of thing. And then also we look at standard business interruption stuff, meaning most businesses are running with a certain amount of cash flow and they have insurance to replace all the stuff in here. So the place burns down and it takes 6 months and they're rebuilt. Well, what happened in the last 6 months? You lost all your staff. You may not have been able to pay fixed expenses. It could be a real drag. It can literally make you dry up and blow away, even though you had an insurance policy. So we explore business interruption with clients, meaning, okay, well, what would happen if this happened? How would you feel? And go through actually ensure the revenues, the trend that you've been going through, key personnel, like if you work with a manager that you cannot replace because but you can actually cover their salary. So for the 6 months that you're being rebuilt, they're getting full strokes and you're guaranteed to get them back. So that's a very, very important coverage as well. And one of the things that we also like to do is we approach, I don't have just one insurance market anymore that does the cannabis. We have about 5. So if you're a licensed producer and a future micro LP guy, we can get about 4 different product liability quotes. And each one is different. And each one may or may not be right for the client. And so that's the level of work and analytical process that we have to go through to make sure that we're tying the right coverages to the right risks. And on top of it all, this is new territory when it does come to lawsuits, meaning if you have a big product recall and somebody starts a lawsuit, nobody really knows where it's going to end and where it's going to start because there's been no real history on it. So that's why they're asking for $25 million limits and all this other stuff so that they can have enough in the bank, so to speak, should it get a little out of control. So that's the type of area that we're working in, and nowhere need to. So where are we going? I guess where's medical going? We talked about that. I mentioned 5 years from now, it's going to be a whole different scenario. And one thing I just wanted to quickly talk about was one of the reasons why I'm here and why I'm so knowledgeable with the crowd and all that stuff is about a year after I started the program, I had to get an operation for a C6, C7 spinal cord fusion because of a car accident that happened before I started. I was just dealing with it, and then they discovered that I needed this operation. And I had so much nerve pain and all this stuff, and it was absolutely outrageous. Gabapentin, the maximum amounts, T3s just to sleep. And my very first customer, the guy who brought me the lease and all that stuff, who is actually an LP today, everybody who can remember those Da Vinci vaporizers that ran on butane. Well, I had a halo on for 90 days, and I'm lying at my mom's place, and he shows up with this, right? And I was terrified of coughing with a halo on, but I ended up coughing. It didn't matter. But that started me getting away from gabapentin. And so here I was in the insurance industry working with this crowd, and all of a sudden I had this neck thing that freaked me out, and I have kids. I want to be there for the family and all that stuff, and it was really bad. I built a 2x4 system that allowed me to sleep on a reclining chair if I had it under my arm, pushed up, relieving the nerve pain. That was the only fucking way I could sleep. So once the operation happened, it took that away, but I still had tons and tons of residual issues, and I could not sleep, and it would cause me all kinds of problems unless I had mega pharmaceuticals. But I remembered cannabis put me to sleep all the time when I was a kid. That's why I got away from it for a while. And so I went through the process of becoming a patient myself and growing as well. I found a strain that works really good for me. I make oils. I use bud for night to put me to sleep. But I'm an insurance agent that has a license and to sell insurance. And I was quite concerned about that becoming public knowledge. But I'm sitting here talking about it because it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why is when I was tapped to be the expert witness on the Allard case about 2 weeks before the case, John Conroy called me and said, I got some bad news. And he said, Canada has gone into your medical records and has found out that you are a cannabis grower and a cannabis patient, and they have announced that they're going to introduce it into the evidence of the Allard case to try to disrupt my evidence. So that was pretty huge. It's like, can they do that? And he didn't think they could, but the next day we had a conference call, and they said, they can. I guess if you sue Canada, they can do whatever they want. And so I was really concerned. I had dinner with John, and I was saying, my concern is I'm an insurance agent with a license. I go through this. I'm outed, so to speak, and then I have a competitor who doesn't like me for whatever reason, says to the insurance council, do you like stoned insurance agents running around or whatever? Who knows? I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was concerned because I had no knowledge. And John and Bebas Vazé and Kirk were at the table, and they all looked at me and they said, if that happens, you have us pro bono to the Supreme Court of Canada. So I figured that was a bit of a comment. I said, okay, let's take it on. Let's do it. And I sat on the stand, and they brought it out, and it didn't make a difference. It made them look like an idiot. So so there you go. That was just a quick side story on how I'm sort of tied in. I'm an insurance guy, but really I'm a cannabis lover, right? And it just so happens that I'm an insurance guy as well, and I'm really good at what I do. And the people that work with me don't let the idea that I'm so involved in the community become a problem. As a matter of fact, it's an advantage for them and their policies as well, because we know a little bit more than most of the brokers. And what makes underwriters comfortable with risks is when a broker can impart correctly to them so they can look on a piece of paper, wow, I understand this risk. Scott understands this risk. I'm getting some good rates. Other brokers put together stuff they don't quite understand, and the underwriters look at it and say, I don't think he understands. What kind of rates is he going to get? Not the same rates. So that's another value added for working with us as well. We're total students of the industry. We won't stop learning, even though we almost know it all. So I don't know, how are we on time, by the way? 10 minutes? Okay. I could, there's not a lot of people here live, but I know there's probably more people watching. Is there any questions I thought I might ask if anybody here might have a question, if anybody is concerning? No? How about a joint? Yeah. Does anybody have a joint and a lighter? Throw me a joint. So, I just wanted to show up and let everybody know that this is out there. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I feel like Elon Musk. Is this going to fuck me? No. Oh my God, I'm terribly sorry. Somebody just gave that to me. You hate to be that guy, and I'm that guy as well. There, let me do that. It's for insurance purposes. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Does anybody have a volcano bag? Let me. No, just kidding. Yeah, for British Columbia, I think we can smoke joints in our vapor lounges. I'm not really sure. That was funny. So I know it's been a bit of a journey, and I started doing this by myself. And the firm that I worked for, again, it took that little crack for the owner to say, okay, let's do it, because there's going to be people that are going to not like dealing with us because we're with cannabis. But we did lose some business, but we replaced it with so much more. It just doesn't matter. But that's what it took, with somebody, again, just to say, okay. And today I work with a staff of over 4 people that are all we do all day long, 9 to 5, in our insurance office with 5 people is deal with insurance revolving around cannabis and that sort of stuff. So it's quite a neat scenario in that regard. And if there are any cannabis insurance agents out there who are looking for good work, I would love to meet you. It's hard to turn an insurance person into a cannabis insurance person, but if I'd like to say take a cannabis person, turn them into an insurance agent. But anyways, we're always looking for people who are interested in this class of business, and we have great opportunity as well for growth and that sort of stuff. So on that, I think that might be it, unless there's anything else that anybody might have a question about. Oh. No, I was going to read out the coverages, but that's fine. I'll throw out a link or something like that if at the bottom of the page on YouTube or something, if we could do that. Sure. Well, my website is mmip.ca, Medical Marijuana Insurance Program.ca, mmip.ca. And for fun, Google my name with the word affidavit next to it, and you could read about the Allard case. It's quite interesting.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, the Allard case is essentially the court case that allowed medicinal cannabis patients to maintain their right to grow and produce their own cannabis. This man's expert testimony attributed to being able to maintain that.
The judge wrote my name in the decision, actually.
Exactly. So if you do Google Scott Wilkins affidavit, it's long, but it's really good.
A lot of pictures. Don't let the 46 pages intimidate you.
But with that being said, it was essentially that court case that proved that growing cannabis at home is essentially safe, and that people should be allowed to do it. And hopefully, come October 17th, y'all are gonna grow your own 4 plants at home. So thank you, Scott, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, people. Sorry about the